Welcome back to the School of Impact podcast. And today I have a mind bending episode for you. And I say that with a little bit of a pun, but also this is going to be an extremely valuable episode for you, especially if you have ever been in a position in your business to where either maybe things aren't working the way they used to, or you're hitting a plateau in your revenue, or maybe you're feeling stressed or burned out and you're just not sure what to do. I have a guest today that's going to be able to unpack what is going on and help you be able to see more consistent growth in your business. And I can say that because he has actually helped me in my business. And I can't wait to be able to unpack a conversation with him today. And he is none other than Chris Bolger, who is a business hypnotherapist. And I'm going to let him explain exactly what that is and how it's going to be helpful to you. And I cannot wait to be able to dive into this. So, Chris, dude, I know we've been on I've had you on my podcast before. I know we've had hundreds and hundreds of conversations. And so I want to say, first off, welcome back to the show. And if you can, I'll hand you the mic. Just kind of further introduce yourself and what it is that you do and how you help people.
Cool, man. Well, thanks so much for having me back on. Your podcast is a really great platform for people to learn really high quality information. And I'm glad that you invited me back on. So, a business hypnotherapist is like this. There's unconscious blocks that people have deep in their unconscious, and it shows up in a different ways. Sometimes it's in their relationships, sometimes in their health, sometimes it's in their business. And the ones in the business, for a lot of people where your main purpose in life is your business, if your business is off, your whole life feels off. So it makes sense to kind of focus on the business. Yeah, we can focus on your deep internal personality first, of course. But I find that it's way more lucrative to do both through the business aspect. When we solve, even though like there's no such thing as business problems. There's just personal problems showing up in business. But that's a good thing. That means we can handle them in business and then solve them on a personal level. So over the past 17 years, I worked with, big companies, small companies like Nestle, Pfizer, Johnson and Johnson, Investors Bank, Citizens Bank, Volvo. I worked with the military several times. But my favorite across the board is when they have business problems. Like when a company has $1 million per week problem and I simply look from the outside, oh, here's the exact part where it's causing that issue. And it's a communication issue. It's an internal issue. And for me to step in and fix that takes no time at all. Like normally that would take somebody months or years and a lot of teams of people to do. But on a hypnotic level, you can solve massive issues in a small amount of time. So that's why I choose to work with business owners because imagine you have a high performance car. You want to take it to a high performance mechanics. So you bring it to somebody, they pop the hood, they stick their hands in the hood, and they move parts around. That's pretty much what a business hypnotherapist does, but in a much shorter amount of time. For example, even when you and I work together, and you can attest to this possibly, in the beginning, you had all the right parts. They were just lined up in the wrong order, which was causing congestion in the engine. So it's hard for the car to perform. And then the first thing we did, we moved some parts around, tightened some things up, and like your first month after that, you're already profitable. It's like that
Yeah.
was an example. And then we didn't really add any new innovative, new algorithm techniques. That's not my job. I'm not good at that. But I know this, there is a systematic hypnotic way to get people to stop scrolling and read your stuff and then take action at the end.
Mhm.
Those hypnotic principles work online and offline. And when you and I went over that stuff, you saw right away that there was a massive uptick in response. What was your experience back then during that time? If you could
Yeah.
remember, if you could remember, because it was a long time ago.
Yeah, I could remember everything. This is a story that I often share with people. I remember when I first reached out. So like, Chris and I had met in a program that you were consulting in, right? You were doing like more consulting with them,
Yeah.
and I was in the program, and I remember like this is like about a year and a half or so, maybe 2 years after, and I remember I had recently had I would call like my first level of success in my online fitness business at the time. and I was doing like 10, 15, 20K per month. And I remember it was in that company and I was on a call with you and I was like, I don't know why I'm still so stressed. I finally have like money coming in. And you were just like, I can't remember exactly what you said, but it was something about like basically your nervous system is shot, and like you said it in more elegantly, but that's how I kind of received it. And like I was living with stress. And then so I remember about like a year or so after that, like in my business, I had seen some pretty big months, but I kept backsliding. Like every few months I would backslide and I didn't know what was going on. By backslide, I mean like I would tank, I would basically burn my business down, I would want to shut everything down, my revenue would drop, and it was a vicious cycle. And I remember like, I'm gonna reach out to Chris. And so I remember DMing you and I had no idea what was going on. And I'm sure a lot of people feel like this too, where it's just like, what is missing? What am I doing? It's like I'm applying the strategies, I'm applying the tactics, right? Because that's what I was doing. And I was like, dude, can you just hypnotize me? I, I don't know exactly what's going on, but just like hypnotize me and like make everything work. And you were like, "We'll see. Like, let's just get on a call so I can figure out what's going on." And I remember then, like, you kind of helping unpack and explain to me, like, there was all these unconscious kind of blocks and barriers that were in existence that I had to work through.
Yeah, and there's layers to what people when people are struggling, there's not just one layer. There's multiple layers. So what I love hearing when someone tells me their struggle, I can really see a layer that no one else can really see because it's a system I created over 17 years. It's called the perception process. The perception process is a system of figuring out how somebody processes the world unconsciously. And these are blind spots. These are psychological blind spots that not even like majority of my clients are usually therapists using this on their clients because this is the reason why people get stuck in therapy. This is the reason why people get stuck in business. This is also the reason why there's certain people in business programs that succeed really fast and other ones don't,
Yeah.
even though they're both really smart and they're both really capable. And in fact, the one that struggles might be the one who's the expert, the real expert, but they struggle the
Mhm.
most. It's because they're trying to process the tasks in a way that's out of alignment with how they normally unconsciously process. And there's not ever been a place to kind of figure out how do you actually process. So when you and I hopped on a call, I heard in between the lines of your struggle how you process. So we were able to take the task that seemed really daunting, and then we were able to funnel it through how you normally process. And then the same task suddenly became really easy. That was one
Mhm.
layer. The next layer was that just like most of us at some parts of our lives, we get ruled by certain types of impulsive thinking, which causes ups and downs in business, which causes urgency, which causes desperation at times, which also causes like gets us to get super lazy and like chill when times are really great. And that complacency is like it's a numb feeling. You can't really tell when it happens. But we were able to figure it out. I helped you reinterpret the reality so that you're able to do what's right and get the results that you want. And then suddenly, what happened? What happened after that?
Yeah, dude. I remember things just it was like the only way I can describe like being able to deal with this stuff. It's like ease, flow. It's like the same activities. The actions didn't really change. It was just easier to execute. And then things just come easier, right? So it's like I remember revenue just like shot up at like and nothing changed. I was still doing the same stuff, right? I just maybe did it more consistently. I executed more consistently, right? Which therefore yielded more and more results. But I think the bigger thing is like just that sense of uh ease, right? I think the number one killer, at least for me, is like, and I think a lot of business owners go through this, is dealing with constant stress, and even if they're not outwardly saying it, it's just like there's that feeling of anxiety or maybe urgency, like they have to get certain things done or they have to meet certain deadlines or they have to meet a certain quota, whether it's like with an outreach number or a sales number or booking calls, and they allow that, at least that was what happening with me, to like really crush you on the inside, which then further um uh I don't know what word I'm looking for here, but like it inhibits your ability to like actually show up as your most powerful self. At least in my experience, that's what was happening. And then that further perpetuates the thinking, right? Because now like you're like, at least for me, like my thoughts were repetitively in more of a stressful state, right? So I was thinking more stressful thoughts, more worrisome thoughts, more anxious thoughts, and that just kept the cycle going. Yeah, and it wasn't for like in my experience, and I shout this from the rooftops to people, man, because I'm just like when like like when that cycle broke, it's just like the sense of peace that was there was like so refreshing, you know?
Yeah. And now that's another layer to what you were dealing with, most people deal with, is that some people just simply lack the resources, the unconscious resources for experiencing peace while also being productive. And here's the thing,
Hmm.
the unconscious mind doesn't make new learnings. So you're not going to spontaneously figure things out. Your behavior is not going to spontaneously work itself out because there's no resource to reference. So it takes somebody else adding the resource to your unconscious mind, which is why I like to use hypnosis as a really good tool. It's not the only tool, but that is a tool that's been reliable and very quick for getting resources into somebody's unconscious mind and it being used by your unconscious in just the right way. And
Yeah.
that's the same for you as it was for many, many people. Like when I work with Fortune 100 companies, you would think that the higher levels, they don't have these problems. They do.
Yeah, yeah.
And usually in a corporate structure, they're able to get by because they can rely on other people to help them out. But when you're a solopreneur and you're doing things by yourself, or you have a couple of VAs, you're kind of the only one paddling the boat, more or less. So there's no one else to rely on to kind of hide those impulsive behaviors. It shows up in your bottom line immediately and it stays
Yeah.
there until it gets fixed, which is why some people are experts for decades and they still struggle. They still have the same issues. I remember this one woman
Yeah,
I
dude.
worked with. Woman I worked like 10 years ago. She's been in business for 50 years. She was still handing out flyers to gain clients.
Gangster. That's old school.
So gangster. You know, and that was like we worked together for a few months, and then she was like, "I don't want to." It's like, "Chris, I'm doing great now. I don't want to just let you go. I want to make you partner of my company." And I was like, handle your $6 million in debt first, and then we'll talk." That was not my thing. But that's no what hap that's what happens normally. It's like once you get, you know, sometimes when I speak to people and I know how they process and they hit me up with like a little concern or a question in between sessions, I just say the right thing and then they're like, "Wow, I feel like
It
God's speaking through you." It's like, no, I'm speaking directly to their psychology, their unique psychology, which feels maybe it is God, but that is my intention, try to be as aligned with God as possible when helping somebody.
I love that. Like one of the ways that I look at like the way that you help people find their processes, like what like really works for themselves. I like to think about it like in the weight loss or in the fitness space. There's like um the body types of like mesomorph, endomorph, ectomorph. And if like an endomorph is trying to apply a mesomorph strategy or it's just not going to work as well for them. But when they apply the right thing for their specific body type, the results are just exponential. And I look at like that similar, at least that's how my mind processes it, to where it's like if you apply the right the way your brain works, it's just you're able to get so much better results from seemingly the same actions, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And there's certain people I work with that don't do the exact same thing that you do, like the same business moves. There's a deep understanding of business moves, but the way it shows up in their life is going to be different. So this is also why you can have a super masculine, super organized guy hit the business moves in a certain way, but then you have a very feminine, emotional person who's still able to crush it, just in a very different way, a different approach to the exact same moves. So that's why some people succeed and some people fail. It's not that they're failures. One of the biggest problems people think is that it's a matter of like your IQ. or your ability to produce. But really, like, let's look at IQ, for example. This is one of so many examples. An IQ is simply a number that's trying to quantify how many good learning strategies you have. So if your
Mhm.
IQ is high, you have a lot of good learning strategies. If your IQ is low, you have not that many. But learning strategies as a whole are my dog's stuck in the room in the other room. He's scratching. Um, Learning strategies as a whole are entirely transferable. So therefore, genius is transferable. Like even my own IQ, when I was experimenting with this years ago, my IQ was 115, which is like above average but not gifted, and my brother was 125, which is gifted. I spent 10 years focusing on changing my learning strategies, but I had to figure out what the learning strategy was. So it took me a long time because I was kind of reinventing the wheel. Usually it takes a couple weeks to a couple months to change someone's IQ. And that includes eliminating things like ADHD and like, all the different, like some people think they have like level 1 autism. It's not autism. Usually it's learning strategies. Their neurodivergence as a whole can be a learning strategy issue. And also what's it called? Reflexes. Uh hyperactive reflexes, but more on that in a second. So then I took another IQ test, another nationally recognized one, and now my IQ is 141, which is considered genius. But if you ask me, I don't really feel that much of a genius. I do feel that life is simpler yet more effective. And I'm more calm and more focused and more at ease. When I have an idea, the idea usually works out pretty great. But I wasn't born that way. I didn't take any special pill. I did something that can happen to literally anybody systematically. And now when I do that to other people, like their lives become more high performance. And from their own eyes, they're like, oh, I'm still the same person. So you're still the same you. You're just more you than ever before.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? Like, how do we like? Is it like I almost look at it as like lenses, for my and like like we put on all these different kind of lenses over time, and we kind of forget who we are. And but like, how does that happen? Is it coming from like past events or trauma, or like how does that stuff pile up?
Yeah. So one of the ways it happens, I'll go over some of the ways. One way is through stress. Cortisol, when you're a kid, your cortisol levels are pretty low. Your threshold for stress is pretty low. So when you have a stressful event happen to you, over time, your cortisol comes back down and then you regulate. So you go back to being your normal happy self, which is why your senses are also heightened when you're a kid. Like the rain has a certain smell, the vivid pictures of the front porch that you grew up on, time moved a lot slower. That's because you aren't stressed out yet. Over time, when you're in a teenager and into an adult years, you don't have that buffer period of regulating your stress. So you have a stressful event, your cortisol shoots up. Not enough time passes, your cortisol shoots up again from another stressful situation. Before you know it, your new threshold for stress is so much higher. It's a skyscraper higher than when you were a child. And then when you relax, you're kind of stuck at that high level, which is why people then like take naps and like they don't really lull themselves to sleep anymore. They just like they're awake, 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 boom, they're asleep. Like that's your brain hemisphere is not able to regulate, which makes everything in life more difficult. It makes everything feel more stressed out. That's even if times are good, that stress level stays with you for the rest of your life until it gets fixed. It doesn't just magically get better on its own. That's one way. Another way is that, like, in business, people screw you over, go through bad relationships or whatever. Things don't work out, you get superstitious, and then you develop these biases. And the biases
Mhm.
are towards technology, the biases are towards other people, biases are towards men or women, which then cause us to unconsciously do things to sabotage future relationships. And if you want more leads, more clients, more people to work with, well, you're doing things unconsciously, you're not even aware of it. And that's another thing that happens. So those two things back to back are really a big factor on why people have problems when they don't even realize they have problems. Like what happens if you have a personal problem, but you're not aware of it, is that a problem?
I would say no. I mean, if you're
Exactly.
unaware.
Now, what happens if you see a potential solution to your problem, but you have no idea how to get out of your current situation? Is that a problem?
Yeah, if you know you have a problem.
So there are a lot of people that are suffering and struggling without even realizing it's a problem, or they identify the wrong problem and then they try to solve problems in the wrong order. So usually it's between thinking it's the wrong problem or knowing what the right problem is and then solving it in a different order.
Mm,
And those are things that any human being, listen, unless you have a PhD in dealing with psychology, you're not going to figure it out. Like you're too busy. Your bandwidth, most business owners, your bandwidth is too focused on growing business. So even if you study buyer psychology, it's a very small sliver of actual psychology. And then
yeah,
even still, if you study traditional psychology, you're still not in the right place because traditional psychology only covers problems, like psychological labels. For example, isn't it funny how somebody could be diagnosed with depression, but you can't be diagnosed with high confidence?
yeah,
Yeah, and it's the
yeah,
exact same mechanism.
yep.
Like when you and I worked together, we talked about the polarizing technique, right? And there's another technique that I came up with to help people control their physiology and thereby start to wipe clean the old biases and wipe clean the stress level that they've had their whole life. And you've experienced firsthand when you first do it, it's like, whoa, I'm wide awake. I'm ready to go and do business. And then the more you do it, eventually you just wake up in a new default mode. And that's the goal. And now, like, I've seen that in you and your progress too. I've seen your awareness, your overall temperament in life change over that time. First, it was like, the very strong masculine composure of like, I'm going through shit right now, and I'm just saying what I'm going through. To now it's like, all right, now I know what to do. To all right, now I'm super productive, I'm super happy, going on vacations, coming back home, six-figure months. What else to do? You know,
It's like kinda it's like Neo in the Matrix when he first figured out, like, he's in the Matrix, you know? It's like once you kinda see the other side, you're like, you can't ever go back, you know?
Yeah, you see it for what it actually is. You see the game
Mhm.
you were playing this whole time. Now, here's another problem that people like to deal with that's the wrong problem to work on. Self-sabotage.
Yeah,
Self-sabotage is just like other problems we have in life. I don't call them problems, I call them games because
yeah.
we're all playing games. You know how some people play the self-worth game and the am I
Mhm.
worthy game, am I deserving game? Other people don't even bother playing that game and they get really successful. And they feel it. So it's all a matter of what game do you want to play.
Yeah,
Self-sabotage is a game that's rigged so that you lose. So even when you work your butt off to solve self-sabotage, there's no guarantee you're going to be left without self-sabotage ever again. But if we play a different game, which is like this, we'll call it the self-protection game, then that game is easy and it's rigged so that you win. That game makes sure that self-sabotage never comes into your life ever again. And in playing the game, you learn so much more about yourself that nobody can ever take away from you. These are games that
yeah,
like people play the wrong games a lot. And we talk about self-sabotage, the ADHD game. That's another game people play. It's a losing game. I'm gonna let my dog out of the room because he's scratching at my door. Give me 2 seconds.
yeah, yeah, go for it. Yeah, these, and what's fascinating too is, like, we gotta choose what games we play, you know? And so, like, you can fall victim to playing, like, the self-sabotage game or the fear and anxiety game. But, like, all in all, like, when you get to consciously choose, like, I'm gonna play this game versus, like, falling into the unconscious of, I'm gonna get sucked into, whatever, the self-sabotage or the self-worth game.
And another game that we play, and I don't know if there's a right name for it, but this is the game I see all the time, especially with high-tech coaches. They want to expand. They want to get to like Jason's level. They want to have six-figure months. They want to have a balanced lifestyle. They have the same levels of energy that Jason has. They might even have the same level of intelligence that Jason has. They might have the same intention, same goal, same everything, same vehicle to get there. but they don't. They might struggle with hitting 10K months or 15K months or 30K months, or maybe they can't get past 30K months. It takes a certain level of expansion. Expansion sometimes doesn't feel good, but that's normal. There's certain pains, like going to the gym. When you do bench press, you're going to feel a certain type of pain. But as a fitness trainer, you know that there's a good pain and there's a bad pain. There's a good pain, you lean into it. If there's a bad pain, all right, rest and don't break yourself over it. Same thing in your psychology. There are times where times get tough, but that kind of toughness is normal. For example, I'm sure you've experienced this. I'm sure a lot of your audience has experienced it too with their customers. How many times do you meet someone and you know for sure, because you've seen it so many times, that this person needs that, like, you look at them and you think to yourself, like, all right, you need to expand. You tell them, you need to expand, you need to take a leap, you need to invest, let's say, like, it could be like invest their cash, invest their time, invest their energy in ways they haven't done that yet, they haven't done yet. And they suddenly think that that's not the right way because they go, "Oh, no, no, that doesn't feel like that feels painful and pain is bad. Therefore, I'm not going to do that." And then, but that's actually the last thing they need to expand. They need to take another leap. And it's like, it's always going to be more leaps than you expect. Like
Yeah.
when you expand, like we've taken more leaps than we did before you started the high ticket game. Did anyone tell you how many big leaps you'd have to take before you got to where you wanted to be?
Yeah, no. I remember like selling gym memberships, and I remember like when I sold like a paid in full in gym memberships, it was like $600, And I was like, "Whoa, it's so much money. It's crazy." And then like, you know, people paying $600 a month, right? It's like later on down the road, and now I've had people pay like 5, 10,000 a month. And they're from like selling $150 memberships to like to that. Yeah, there's so many different leaps uh and I think just different levels of thinking and actions and things that have happened, and so many failure points too, of like being okay with people rejecting you. Like there's pain involved with that. I know if somebody's like no, you're like, oh, it must be me. It's like no, it's not. It could be, but it's probably not.
Yeah, it's probably just your offer. Like people on sales calls, they're rejecting the offer. They're not rejecting you. If
Or
they're a lead
themselves.
or themselves,
They just could be afraid.
yeah, they could just be. Yeah, exactly. They see an opportunity and they back out because they're also being controlled by impulsive thoughts. They look at their bank account and then they try to figure out what decisions can they make based on what they currently have. But any decision you make on all the things you currently have, that's only going to generate more of the exact same circumstance. And it's crazy because you look at their life, it's like you've been living in the same circumstance for how long? Maybe it's time you do decisions outside of that, illogical of that, to see what happens. You're not going to die. Even if they come and take all your money tomorrow, you're still going to be okay. Like it's actually fine. It's always been fine. And but they don't realize that because they're living in fear. They're controlled by impulses, and that's the workaround for everybody. One of the things when I work with someone is not just like working on your own impulsive behaviors so that you have better relationships, better income, way less stress, and you're more productive. And you see where you should be worried and where you should definitely not be worried, even when the numbers don't look like it. But it's also how do you handle your customers? How do you handle your prospects that have impulsive thoughts, show up to the call, and you can't just tell them how it is. You have to work around it. You know, there's a psychological part to working with new people and everybody processes things differently. So there was someone I worked with. His name is Chris. Actually, I think you know him from back in the day. And when he started learning about impulsive thoughts, he would hop on a call with prospects and he would see, oh wait, this person's impulsive. I knew exactly what to do here. So he knew he was going to get a sale before the sale even started. And for him, that was power. And like things like that, there's like maybe 0.001% of people actually know. So it becomes like a really blue ocean on what's possible in your business. The truth is though, usually you're about a handful of resources unconscious resources away from making things work. You know, like Russell Brunson says, like, you're only one funnel away. It's like
Yeah.
you're actually just like you're like one resource away. And it's not just one resource, you're like three or four resources away for things finally clicking. And
Yeah.
my biggest problem in business, and you see this, it's like there's the expert's curse. It's like
Mhm.
I don't do the things, all the mundane things that every business owner should be doing. So what I do is when I have conversations, I'm able to dive right into someone's unconscious mind with a microscope and show exactly what's going on. And I can't explain that enough in my content. I can't explain it on a website. So it's, but when they meet me and see me like Volvo or Pfizer, they're like, "Who the hell is this guy?" To them, I'm like Jason Bourne. They're like, "It's freaking Jason Bourne," you know. But it's fun stuff. It's super fun, and it's so cool to see high ticket coaches. That's where the biggest payoff actually is, because when you go to a high level, and you go to like a Fortune 100 company and they're dealing with multi-million dollar issues, it's not even their money you're helping them save. It's just a random dead entity that you're helping them save. So they're not really that grateful, even when you solve all their problems. When you work with a
Yeah.
high ticket coach, someone who's trying to make it, you've experienced this before where like somebody shares something with you and then it changes everything. Like that's really impactful. Like you just changed someone's entire life and they're actually grateful for it, and they can see the impact that you've made in their life. That's way more rewarding. The numbers that like help them go from like 10 to 100,000 a month, or like what, like 100 to 3 million a month. The higher the number gets, the less rewarding it gets. It's good for them, but like that's so unrelatable to everybody else. So it's actually way more impactful both in a local area and a global area when you see somebody who is struggling finally make it.
Yeah. So what are some is there anything else that you feel like, somebody that whatever level they're at, whether they're just getting started in business or, they've been in business but they may be feeling a little bit stuck. Is there anything else that you feel like they should know, in terms of like being able to uncover some of these resources, or to really maybe see more progress that you haven't shared yet?
Yeah. So another way people can make some progress is like you have to change. This is gonna sound really weird and nerdy, but then I'll back it up with something simple. You gotta change the blood flow in your brain from your amygdala to your prefrontal cortex. Your amygdala is this place that operates in fear, and the amygdala thinks of thoughts for you. Like you don't have to worry, you don't have to think anything, but the amygdala will make thoughts for you, and they're all negative. And then if you don't know the difference between prefrontal cortex thoughts and amygdala thoughts, which you and I talked about back in the day, then the amygdala will then make its way and hijack the logic center of your brain, which then makes you feel things and backs up the fear with a lot of logic. And it makes you believe that you're thinking real thoughts, like it's reality, but it's actually not. But you wouldn't know that because your blood flow in the brain is going to the wrong area. The prefrontal cortex, that's where you think your own thoughts, when their thoughts are evidence based. And those evidence based thoughts, even if you're in a shitty situation, it's not really that bad, which helps you operate and make better decisions. Making better decisions, it's never going to be one decision that changes everything. It's going to be many decisions made over time. So, you want to change a circumstance in someone's life or change a bottom line, it's going to be multiple decisions. So, it's not the one magic thing that's going to just explode the business overnight. It's going to be getting the part of your brain that makes the best decisions functioning properly. And a quick way to do that is getting your body to feel safe again. And here's how to do that. In your body, there are these things called afferent nerves. Afferent nerves simply communicate across systems. So, like, there's afferent nerves in your brain communicating to your body, and there's afferent nerves in your body communicating to your brain. For example, you know what it's like to meditate and you think of one positive thought, and then eventually you feel calm because of that positive thought. That's your afferent nerves. But here's the thing, when in your brain, you have 20% afferent nerves communicating to your body. In your body, you have 80% afferent nerves communicating back to your brain, telling your brain what to think based on how it feels and to be in your body. So, if we want to get you to think in your prefrontal cortex and make better decisions, we got to get your nervous system to shift out of sympathetic and get into a parasympathetic. You can spend 30 minutes a day doing that, but you can also spend 3 to 5 minutes tapping on your body, letting your body know, hey, look, we're not on the beaches of Normandy at war right now. And what you're doing is short term, it feels like nothing. Over 6 weeks, you create a permanent change in your stress response.
Yeah.
So one small thing to do, it's so underestimated because you have the wrong people explaining it on social media, like this holistic self-care wellness angle, which is fine, but it takes away the importance of what it's actually doing. Tapping your body every day for 3 to 5 minutes, even twice a day. 3 minutes, this a solid 3 minutes every day, twice a day for 6 weeks, you're gonna have a way different stress response. You're not gonna realize it till 6 weeks because you're too busy swimming in stress. Cortisol is a numbing sensation. You can't tell when you have high cortisol. People think, oh, I have anxiety, it must be high cortisol. No, usually if you have anxiety, it's low cortisol. That's a whole different other story because cortisol is like a painkiller. But the right cortisol mixed with the right level of dopamine creates motivation, fearlessness, bold action, and calculated risk, which is exactly what you need from having multiple six-figure months, having consistent income, for expanding and not and understanding you're taking a risk, and you're more than happy to do so. So the first thing is get your body under control. It's your body is your biology, and your biology always trumps your psychology. So if your psychology is stopping, like for example, decision making is about 80% psychological and 20% biological. Meaning, like if you can control that 20%, you're doing actually great. So you body tap 3 to 5 times a day. And then the other parts is going to be reinterpreting reality. It's going to be understanding what is the difference between what's the difference between an impulsive thought and a real thought. That one takes a little bit of time, and that's where real fun starts, especially when it comes to like relationships and sales meetings and stuff like that. But for
Dude,
now,
I still do that stuff today. Like I've been doing that for like the last couple of years now of just every day I'm just like all over, and then like I always reinterpret thoughts like every day. And like once you do it and get in the habit of it, it just I feel like I don't know how people go through life without doing that.
well,
Like
here's why. And I totally get it because I was in the same boat for a long time. When I first saw this stuff years like over 2 decades ago, I was like, this is bullshit. This is not real. What do you mean I got to tap my body like a clown every day for the rest of my life? And then I started learning how the brain works through my own situation. And this is the truth. This is why there are certain things that we have to do every single day, whether you're a business owner or not, if you want to have a great life. There's no way around it. There really is no way around it. I've tried, I look for the fringe in psychology, and I go there. I go where people either are unaware of or too afraid to explore themselves. And I'm telling you, there are certain things that have to be boring and repetitive and every day, and they're not trends. They're going to pick up over time because this is what evolution looks like. Your amygdala, the part of your brain that creates negative thoughts, is like the hunter. That's been overactive for 1.8 million years. That kept us safe. That's why we're alive right now, because our ancestors were controlled by the amygdala, in fear 24/7. Don't go into that cave, run after that animal, do whatever it takes, change your actions every day to try to get the outcome. That kept us alive back then. But then we switched over to agriculture and farming, and that was planting seeds every day. And that looks like making content every day, showing up every day, doing these boring things every day. That's prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex, that's reality. That's only been overactive for 30,000 years. So imagine you're in the gym and you do bench press every day for 15 years. No, you do bench press every day for 18 years, as hard as you can every day. You're going to have a tight chest. Then you switch over to doing back, and you've been doing back for only 3 years. Your chest is still going to be tight. No,
yeah.
no, actually, yeah, that you've been doing back for, let's say, 3 months. So it's going to take a lot longer because you've been doing chess for 18 years. We're in
Mhm.
that level of evolution where we're not fully evolved into like supreme beings. We're still cave people. We're just cave people with iPhones now.
which makes it even worse,
It
you
does
know?
because we have so many decisions to make, and it drains us.
Yeah,
Our
yeah.
ancestors never had to make so many decisions before. Our ancestors would wake up, get animals,
Dude,
make children.
we could do a whole nother episode on like dopamine and all of that stuff because that's a whole rabbit hole
Yeah,
to go down.
it is, but we'll keep it short. Um, So the truth, like this is why there's certain things we have to do every day. I still do them every
Yeah.
day. Even when times are good, we still have to do them because if we don't, we will backslide. There's certain things that our brains tend to do. One of those things is it tends to be negative and it tends to be in chaos. If you
Mhm.
are left all alone and do nothing to generate better behavior on your own, you will fall down into a negative behavior every time. Everybody, Tony Robbins, you name it, everybody. We're not special in that way. We're special in other ways, but there's a handful of things that we got to be doing every single day. And without them, we are nothing. We're never going to expand. We're never going to live the life of our dreams. We will just waste away and regret on their deathbed. And that's really not necessary because you see it, like you do it every day. I do it every day. It's such a small yet critical part of my day that like even people like I live with, like when I have a relationship, they don't even realize the work I'm doing in that time in my office. But that's the reason why all this is being built. That's the reason why all this is fun. That's the reason why I don't want to do anything else besides grow business because it's fun. My nervous system and my mind are primed for it. There are times
Yeah.
we've all experienced this before. We were burnt out, you know, working extra hard, stressed out, trying to pay bills, and it gets to us and we can't sleep over bills. Then you reinterpret reality and you regulate your nervous system. And then you're like, you know what? Whether I have a lot of money or not, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because I can generate more of it. And I know how to generate more of it. And I know how to make good decisions. Therefore, this bad situation, it's not going to last more than a couple weeks or a couple months. But I'm going to find a way out of it. And it's going to be fun. And I'm thriving whether I have a large bank account or a small bank account.
Yeah. And the irony here is that like the more in that state you're in, the easier it is to attract people because like you're detached, right? You're not like stressed and like attached to the situation and people just seem to come easier, right? At
Absolutely.
least it's my experience.
How many times how many times, Jason, have you, like, had a big push in your content or a big push week or a push month, and you started feeling like maybe you were, like, kinda lazy or, like, complacent in the beginning, but then, like, you're picking up speed, and then you get this momentum, and you suddenly feel like you're in a flow. And then you're just like in the grocery store, shopping around, or just living your life in between calls, right? And you're still in that magnetic place. You look at your phone and some random person who you haven't talked to in like 5 years hits you up and say, "Hey man, I don't know why, but I've been thinking about you. Let's work together." So
Mhm.
like it just
Yeah.
starts creating a pull from all directions. So like when someone is in a stressful place, half of what we're saying right now might land. If
Yep.
someone's watching this and they're still looking for something that resonates, you're probably so stressed out that nothing's going to resonate. So realize like
Yeah.
there might be an invisible shield over you that's stopping you from taking in anything that's going to be useful for you. In
Yep.
which case, like that's a conversation to have, because you could break that pretty quickly. But somebody else, you know what it's like to be in flow and then suddenly everything starts to work out. There's a science to that. There's a system to that. It's predictable. You no longer have to wait and hope to God that you get into a flow again or get back into the river of anointing, as I sometimes call it. But you know, people you meet someone, you're like, this person knows their stuff. You have no evidence that they know their stuff, but you can just tell by the way they hold themselves, like that person knows something that I need to know. Do you think
Yeah.
they just rolled out of do you think they rolled out of bed and just woke up like that? Like, no, they did things consistently for a long time to get to that
It's
place.
I call it energetically attractive, right? They're just like there's something about like that you just want to dive deeper in with.
Yeah.
So if somebody wants to go deeper into this stuff and wants to be able to connect with you, and I know you have so many different resources to be able to like point people towards and really help people with this stuff, like where should they go?
So for everyone who's listening, I'm gonna give you guys a gift. Today we talked about how to get the blood flow changing from one part of the brain to the other. And I find that that's something that when you get that down, overall, your whole life starts getting better because you start making better decisions. So I have an audio that will just do that for you immediately. It takes about 6 minutes. It'll redirect blood flow immediately, and you'll have a change in your decision making skills immediately. You'll feel it, you'll see it, you'll be able to compare it from 5 minutes before that. If you guys hit me up on Facebook, add me on Facebook, or just shoot me a message. I'll see it come into my spam folder. Just say, "Hey, Jason sent me," and I'll send it over to you. It's my Facebook page is facebook.com/Chris the Hypnotist. Shoot me
Easy
a
to remember.
message.
And we'll put the link your for your page here. So you just look into wherever you're watching this or listening, just look in the description section and it'll be there.
Yeah,
And
and if you don't have Facebook, I'll drop my calendar link. Just hop on a quick chat, and we'll just get to know each other. See where you're at, and if
yeah,
I have a resource that can help you, I'll gladly give it to you.
yep. Highly recommend it. Really you know, you can't read the label from within the bottle, right? Is a saying that I've heard, and sometimes we can't see what's going on from within ourselves, but when we can have somebody on the outside that can help pull out what is on our inside and help us see these things, it just everything can change for you. So
Wait, what was that saying? Because like I have a saying too that's kind of like that, but mine is that what's yours?
it's not mine. I've heard it somewhere, but it resonated where you can't read the label from within the bottle.
Yeah, I say the eyeball cannot see itself.
Yeah, same concept, right? Yep.
Yeah, that's
So,
cool. Well, thanks for
but
having me on,
cool.
Jason.
Yeah, and yeah, if anybody has questions, hit up Chris. You can hit up me, and I can point you to Chris, whatever you want to do. And remember, y'all, your message matters now more than it ever has before. And so
That's
don't be
right.
afraid to speak it. As always, be seen, be heard, and be impactful.